How can you remove 25 buildings, reduce your capital renewal by 154 million, and save $6 million of opex every year? Well, this Bow Tie Tuesday, I am pleased that Gerald Morgan has joined me from the University of Missouri because they've done exactly that over the last several years. And we get to hear a little bit more about that story. Gerald, welcome. Gerald's the Director of Space Management and Client Relations at University of Missouri. Welcome to Bow Tie Tuesday.
Aaron, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it and really excited to get to share a little bit more about what we've done here at the University of Missouri. We feel like it's a fairly substantial undertaking, and it has been quite successful. We're not done yet, but we've made good inroads on at least staving the increased building maintenance, repair, and capital needs of our facilities, and we finally got it headed in the right direction. We were growing by leaps and bounds in terms of our backlog of maintenance and repair needs, and we realized that was unsustainable. So totally excited to share a little bit of what we've done and kind of what that process looks like with your audience there.
Yeah, so take me through kind of how we got here. I got some of the numbers, which was, at some point, right, the backlog of capital renewal for just the E&G space, right? So not even the rest of campus, but just the E&G space is somewhere around $1 billion. The maintenance budget to support these is well beneath kind of recommended amounts at like 0.5% or so.
Right.
So when did you all begin to recognize, hey, we have to do business differently? And then when did you start setting plans, and who was involved in that conversation of going, hey, how do we change like what we're doing here at Missouri to create a more sustainable future?
Sure, absolutely. So back around, this was the Vice Chancellor of Operations at the University of Missouri. This was his brainchild. This was something that he realized we needed to undertake. And he first started talking to me about this in about 2016. I had just started as Director of Space Planning and Management at that time. And so I think he gave me a year to sort of get my feet under me, and then he dropped this bomb on me. Hey, Gerald, we want to eliminate 750,000 to 1 million gross square foot of space over the next 5 years to eliminate poor performing buildings and building area on our campus. And so after I picked my jaw off the ground, I spent a little bit of time over the next week or two sort of thinking about what are the implications of doing something like this? Because again, I was fairly new in space planning, but I did recognize that he was talking about almost 10% reduction in E&G space, because at the time we had about 7 million gross square foot of space that were educational and general type space. So I was floored, and then I was excited. I'm like, okay, I like this challenge, and I get where he's coming from. We've tried for years to get additional funding from state legislatures. We've continued to take more tuition money, which we could not continue to do. And honestly, when we started the model back in the 80s of how we funded building maintenance, we did it with about 30% tuition and 70% state appropriations. That model has completely flipped, where we now require about 70% of that to come from tuition, because the amount from the state has stayed flat or even gotten less over time. So that's been the problem that we had to address. And he realized that no matter how he presented this, and we had good data at the time, how we presented this problem, we weren't going to get more money. So we had to figure out a different way to do this. And in his mind, it was obvious. Let's reduce square footage. Let's get rid of poor performing buildings by divesting or demolishing. And let's put that savings towards the buildings that we want to maintain properly and or new square footage. So that's how that hatched. It took longer than we anticipated. It really wasn't until 2022 that we got into the meat of the actual demolition of numerous buildings on campus. And as you might imagine,
how many were you able to, like, let's say, sell off or reallocate elsewhere versus kind of demo of the 20?
Right. I believe we divested of 4 of the 25.
Okay.
So not a lot. You know, the ones that were off campus, we could sell. But if it was on campus, we didn't want to sell that piece of property
Right.
to somebody that was outside of the university. So those were demolished.
Had to be demoed. So that's,
Yeah.
I mean, 21 buildings demoed since 2022.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, that's remarkable. I mean, I know a lot of institutions that go, if we could just demo one building because I want to get this off my books, that would make my decade. So tell me, like, what was the support like, right, to get that kind of motivation? And then how was it dealing, you know, we're using lots of data to help present to stakeholders. There's so many stakeholders involved to accomplish what I imagine is lots of lifting and shifting.
Yeah, absolutely. So to answer your question about the support, I will say this, you absolutely, and we absolutely had to have support from top leadership at the university to undergo such a radical transformation of our campus landscape. Because, I mean, that's really what it is, and that's what it was. And we knew, luckily, we had a president, a system, and university chancellor, both that fully supported this undertaking because we had provided the data to them that showed we're headed in the wrong direction here on maintenance and repair needs, and over $1 billion at this point, and it's just continuing to go up. That's not sustainable. And they understood that. So they were willing to support us there, and that's good. So you get leadership on board, and then the real challenge is going out and getting your message out to the different academic units. That's really the challenge. So we started meeting with all the deans, with their department chairs and key leadership in each of the colleges and schools, and laid it out. Hey, this is our problem. This is where we are. This is where we need to be. And this is how we're going to fix it. Now, as you might imagine, not everybody.
A little pushback from some people.
Yeah. You know, especially faculty and staff, I'll be honest, they get comfortable in their situation. And when you start telling them that we're going to move your entire department to another building, and oh, by the way, I can't tell you just now where that's going to be, you can imagine there's some trepidation there. And I totally understood that. And so the approach and how the message is made is almost as important as the message itself. But
well, let me ask you a piece on that, right? Because I mean, part of your job title, right, is client relations, which means you know, clearly you're really good at having some hard conversations with people and mediating and finding a solution that ultimately happens. What's either some of the kind of either tips, tricks, or piece of the process when you're maybe first having that conversation to getting to a solution that you know might be somebody else in your shoes would be like, oh, that I didn't think about that, or that's a really helpful way of thinking of framing the conversation or otherwise.
Yeah, so a couple of the key things that have to happen if you want to be successful in these types of negotiations, I would say that the first thing is come in with cold hard facts, okay, and have good data to back that up. And we knew we had to have that information and that kind of data, so we had started. We had reinvigorated our Space Utilization Inventory survey process, which previously was done just every 3 years and primarily for research space. We made it mandatory annually for all of our space on campus. And that way, we really had a good sense of how space was being used based on people that were assigned to offices, how the classroom information from the registrar. And so we had good data. And then secondly,
registrar data, HR data, like lab
yes,
research data, just
exactly.
How do we bring all this together?
So having all of that, putting it in a sort of story format that tells the story of why we need to do what we need to do. And then honestly, going in for the initial meetings and really maybe 20% was me giving the story. The other 80% was me and my team listening to the concerns and the needs of these people, because they need to know that we're listening and we do have empathy and we do care about where they land and that they're going to be able to continue to do the quality research or teaching or whatever the case may be. We just needed them to understand, we get it. This is not easy, but we're going to work with you to make sure you can continue to do what you need to do reasonably well and in space that, and this was the other thing, what we said many times was, you're going to do it probably in less space, but in better space. So that was always our goal. Compact these units reasonably and get them into the receiver buildings when they were coming out of whatever building they were coming out of, getting them into buildings, but doing some renovation that would create nice, at least as nice, if not nicer space than what they had before. So, that was
less is more, in other words, right? Hey, we're going to take you somewhere that's less square footage, but it's going to be better because we're going to build it for your team, your department, your whatever it is, where it's built with purpose, and you're giving us some of that feedback of how it should be built or what it should include.
So that's really the key, is keeping them plugged in through the process. And I will tell you, there were numerous instances where I had people that would just fight me along the entire way, and we dealt with that, and that's okay. I understand, but we eventually got them into their space, and I'd go back 6 months later for a walkthrough and to kind of find out how the space is working for them. And most of them were like, "Man, I'm sorry I gave you so much trouble. This is so much better," because it was better quality space. And actually, we tried to create some collaboration spaces that they didn't have as well. So there was more community that occurred amongst these units, and I think they were enjoying that as well.
Very cool. Yeah, I mean, getting to a win doesn't mean it's going to be frictionless, right? But
exactly.
But it sounds like y'all got some real wins, and they felt it. I'm loving what you all are doing up there at Missouri, and can't wait to see what's next. Thanks so much for joining. It's been a real pleasure on this Bow Tie Tuesday, and looking forward to whenever our next chat is.
Yeah, again, thank you for having me. And just for everybody out there, if anybody has interest or wants more detail, they can certainly reach out to me. I love to share my story with anybody who wants to listen.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
All right.